All right, well, I'll see what I could do about it. Is there any other deals we could work out? 'Cause my buyer's hungry.
Really?
Hungry hippo.
Well, I'm working on stuff. I just don't have it right now.
Okay.
All right,
Talk to you Monday. All right, later.
All right, yeah. Bye.
All right, Ivan, so you're live.
All right.
So tell us about what happened, right? I know you were on a call with, was that a wholesaler?
Yeah.
Okay, you need to just let us know what transpired.
So this is a deal in Central PA, and we're trying to work out this deal. I've been trying to do it for a couple weeks, and she was saying how the seller was having some reservations about it, but also she, in the midst of it, was making like 7,000. So she wasn't that comfortable with making that sort of spread. I guess she's used to doing lower, especially because she's an agent. So she may be a little bit afraid, which I told her there's nothing to be afraid
That's
of.
cool, I'll take it.
Yeah, I've done this many times before with agents and without agents. So towards the end of that call, she was saying, you know, I don't mind if you just reach out to him directly, but I could also just do a three-way call, which is actually even better because when you do a deal, you want to have a relationship that's built on trust already. She's closed many deals with that guy before. So me getting an introduction is like me getting, if I was dating, right? Like, oh, this supermodel, her friend recommended her to you, you know.
Yeah, it's like an alley-oop.
Yeah. So it's a good connection point. So yeah, this has been a matter of persistence because I called her like 5 times this week and she picked up finally. But I'm sure if I didn't kept on it about this deal, so it would not have worked out.
Now, to me, that's different, right? If you were contacting the seller 5 times and you finally picked up, that's different, but not an agent. They make money through brokering deals, right? So you would think that she would be a tad bit more responsive and gung-ho about it. But one thing I like that you did, I'm not sure if you guys caught this, you pretty much like address things head on, but in a personable way, such as, there's not an elephant in the room, is it? Why were you asking that?
Oh yeah, so you know about the black swan analogy, right? The elephant in the room, the hidden kind of secret about the deal. The best way to do it, I've come to learn, is if people are laughing. So it's easier to expose things because now they're not in a fearful state of mind. They're more of like, okay, this guy's not a jerk face. Like if I tell him about what's going on, he's not gonna just berate me for the rest of my life.
Right.
Because people like to do business with people they like.
And plus, if I was on the receiving end and you said that to me, I would be thinking, you know what? Maybe he understands that every deal goes exactly as planned.
Yeah.
Or sometimes there's some monkey wrench that's thrown in there. So he's open to that. He just want to know what's going on. And another thing you asked like head on was, she's like, oh, I can just let you have the deal. Like she sounded like she was giving up to me. But you didn't say, okay, cool, give me the seller's number. You said, no. How about we do a 3-way or some type of handoff so that she can give you somewhat of a warm introduction. Why'd you do that?
Oh yeah, so the alley-oop thing would be great. Basically, it's about the connection point, right? If you get that alley-oop, it's better. But it's also a matter of showing concern for her. Like I mentioned, she mentioned a little comment about there's some other companies that did this not the right way. So she had some deals that clearly went the wrong way. So I went, and to ease the alley-oop, I asked her directly, before I think the elephant in the room, like, hey, you mentioned something about other companies doing something. Is there something I need to be mindful of, especially in this market, this new market I'm hitting, right? I want to make sure what's going on in that local market that I should be aware of.
So that's a long segue, guys, to get us into today's topic, right? I wanted to interview Ivan. So Ivan, he's here locally in Atlanta. He wholesales, amongst other things. He's knee-deep in real estate. But the reason why I wanted to interview him is because we were chatting about the top mistakes beginning real estate investors make and how to avoid those mistakes. So if you don't mind sharing, what are some of the top mistakes that you say people make and how they can avoid it?
Okay, so number one is the market, timing the market. So you could have all the money in the world, you could have the best team, you know, the best salesperson, you hired them at $250,000 a year, You could have the vision of McDonald's. We're gonna serve 1 billion cheeseburgers a day. Like, none of that matters if you're not timing the market, right? If you're in a market where everybody and their mama is a wholesaler, and you got sellers that are fielding 15 calls a day, like, hey, you want to sell your property? From Billy Bob that doesn't know how to handle any sort of call. When they get some sort of rebuttal, like, no, get off my phone, Billy Bob. They don't know how to handle that conversation. It's like they're grounded in identity of ice, right? So timing the market, like figuring out, okay, this is not working out. I got to move on. Cutthroat. I can't make money in this market anymore. Move on. So that's number one. Number two.
Well, question. How do you avoid that?
Oh.
Like, what are the signs to say that, oh, this market is becoming way too saturated, or the ship is sinking, it's time to set sail and find a new place to set up shop?
That's a perfect segue to the next point of like keeping an eye on measurements. So a couple months back, we found out 1/6 of, like, our team was supposed to be doing 6,000 calls across 3 months. They only did 1,000. So 1/6 of the actual results occurred. So, like, of course there's not going to be any leads being closed or anything like that. They're not actually even doing the work. So keeping an eye on measurements and just berating those measurements, like, you know, you're a wildebeest.
Yeah, especially if you have operating costs.
Yeah.
Right, because you need them to close and get revenue coming in, and if they're not working the leads, then it's like we still have these operating expenses that we have to dish out.
Yeah, we're paying for leads every month, and they're not, like,
Not being worked.
executing on them.
Yeah.
It's just bleeding cash, basically.
Yep.
Which is another thing. Like, you and I are both on this great concept of there could be a cost to being cheap, and we're always about doing innovative ways to get leads, right? To get sellers on the phone, signage, calling, whatever it takes. Because if we're not actually spending money to figure out what's the next best marketing move, we're gonna have a very high cost up to that, right? We're not gonna have any leads, which is like bleeding cash again. So keep that in mind too. Like, JP, I know you have clients, right? They may want to shortcut, not learning the game from you. Like, I'm just gonna do this all myself, right? But there could be a cost to being cheap. Like, they have years.
You're gonna pay for it either way.
Yeah, decades of experience that you bring to the table. I remember I had a coaching client of mine that also, in the same regard, like, they were concerned with me making too much money, but I was like, yo, you want to do this all yourself? You're like getting in a Ford Pinto versus you could get into like a Lambo with me, right? Like, the experience I bring to the table with even just rental properties, you're gonna have so much. Like, I've had dudes that were my mentors that were literal Korean War interrogators.
Wow.
Like, you're saying you're not cool with giving me a couple extra, bucks. Like, what?
That's a good point. From a business standpoint, fairly recently, I've been exploring with Facebook ads to drive leads. So it worked here and there, but I'm sure there could be some areas of improvement. And I decided, you know what? I need to find someone who's actually better than this than me.
Yeah.
And so I found this guy. I haven't hired him yet, but I interviewed him. And he was like, oh, it's $1,000 a month. And I was like, well, what about your time and hours? And he's like, honestly, why does that matter? That's what he says to me. Why does it matter? He's like, if I'm giving you the results, who cares that I only work 15 minutes a month?
Yeah.
Right?
Get out of my pocket.
Right,
Yeah.
right. If you get like a 4x, 5x return based upon my efforts, why does it matter? And when he said that, I was like, damn, I feel humbled by that. But I'm like, yo, you're absolutely correct.
Yeah.
All that matters is the results.
Yeah. Because he brings years to the table, right?
Correct.
That you don't have.
Correct. Instead of me trying to go out there and of course I might be able to figure it out, but it might be some time involved.
Yeah.
So
time you could better invest elsewhere.
right, and especially things that I'm better at.
Yeah.
Okay, so what would be the next mistake and how to avoid it?
So along those lines of saving time, which is more than money, I feel, is because you could exponentially grow your money through time, is having a mastermind. Like if you don't have a mastermind or a coach, somebody kicking your ass, like you're just kind of shooting yourself in the foot. Like, there's only so much you could push yourself. If you have somebody like waking your ass up, like, hey, did you do those things you talked about last month?
Yeah.
Did you do
Like a
do
drill
that
sergeant.
sale?
Like a drill sergeant, right?
Yeah. So every month, and even more frequency, I have at least one mastermind where we are like challenging each other, like give us everything you have, like vulnerability, like sometimes we even talk about stuff outside of business, like how, because ultimately your life is toned down to health, wealth, and love. So if one of those things are missing, right, I learned that concept a year ago. If one of those things are missing, something's gonna suffer. Your heart is gonna suffer, your relationship is gonna suffer, which is you're not gonna wanna get up out of the bed, right? Like jump out of bed, yeah! Hey, I'm going through a divorce, yeah! Like, unless you have somebody like there, like, hey bro, I'm with you. You're not gonna wanna push hard, right?
So accountability, I do find that true. Especially not being sensitive, right? You gotta have thick skin. One of my best accountability partners, sometimes I avoid linking up with him because he's always on top of me. Like, man, we talked about this last month, man. You still ain't do it? I'm like, well, what had happened was, he's like, bro, like, come on, just cut it. But I appreciate it because it's really forced me, like, hey, man, you gotta stay true to your word. If you said you were gonna do it last month, you should have done it.
Yeah.
You know? All right, so what would you say is one more mistake? I was about to say mistake. Yeah, one more mistake for the viewers that they need to avoid, and how to avoid it. Excuse me.
So more specific to real estate, I would say rental properties. So in my business of wholesale, you know, we do deals together too. But coming out of that, like, I noticed, especially when you're in the midst of figuring out a market is saturated, you know, like we talked about Billy Bob. If you have a deal go wrong, you're gonna be in kind of a pinch. But if you have a rental property or numerous, like I have like 8 units right now, you're not that much in a pinch because you still have this money coming in. Whereas maybe that closing for that wholesale deal got extended, you know, a couple weeks, you still got this money coming in. You're not like, what's happening in my life? And I've seen that happen to people personally. It's not a pretty thing. So rental properties would be a big mistake I see a lot of wholesalers not doing.
Yeah, you mean like just diversifying your portfolio and
Exactly.
your income. All right, because that's a good thing. Just to tie in what you said earlier, you might be killing in wholesaling. Let's say you're making $100,000 a month, 6 figures a month, but then the market dries up, or the market becomes oversaturated, and if that's your only source of income, and you haven't done your due diligence, like you mentioned, seeing the signs is know when it's time to explore another market, or not having a second source of income, all the cars come tumbling down.
Yeah, and not spending money on like, oh, this is a new lead source for me, this is a new area for me. Even getting a coach, like, hey, this coach has been hitting new markets all the time. He's invested tens of thousands on figuring out what's the next market. Like, that person is who you want to be connected with. That takes money too.
All right, cool. So last question before we wrap this up, Bob, and I appreciate all your words of wisdom. In all transparency, what was the biggest mistake you think you made, and how you could have avoided if you had 2020, you know, in hindsight?
So this year specifically?
Yeah, or not this year, but like a big mistake you made that you wish if you know, if I could rewind the hands of time, I would have did this differently to avoid that mistake. See, I didn't prep with this one.
Yeah.
Curveball. Strike.
I gotta reinforce my last point.
Okay.
Because we did have millions of transactions in the wholesale game in the last couple of years. So I would have gotten more rental properties, and I think I would have enjoyed, you know, tens of thousands more in cash flow. I think anybody would. But I had that thought process like you did, like you shared a second ago, a situation where, oh, this is never gonna dry up. Like this is just gonna mountains of cash. Woo! No, that's not the way it works. Like it's a business. You got to stay on top of your business.
I agree. There's a story in the Bible about a gentleman named Joseph, and the Pharaoh, who's actually a king, had a dream, but didn't know the meaning of it, meaning he didn't know how to interpret it. And he said he had a dream where there were 7 fat cows, and then came 7 lean and scrawny cows who ate up the fat cows. And so Joseph interpreted that, oh, okay, so there'll be 7 years of abundance, but then the 7 years that come after that will be years of scarcity, to the point you would even forget the years of abundance. So what we need to do is set aside 20% of all the crops, the cash, the revenue, and so forth. So it's to be mindful that even though your business may be killing it, you know, let's say you're making, you know, great money day in and day out without a care in the world, build those reserves, because you never know, the market could dry up. You never know, a pandemic can happen, right? You never know what can happen next. But if you have some reserves, that provides you with some time to pivot and adjust. So I think that's like profound wisdom from the ages, you know? All right, cool guys, so that's all we got. Just want to interview my good friend over here and business partner, Ivan. He's been killing in the game, Atlanta, Georgia. If you had to give one last takeaway before we cut this out, what would be that one takeaway?
Watch more of JP's videos.
Hey, that means hit that subscribe button and share that bad boy.
Yeah.
All right, guys, as always, this is to your success, earn passively, and live passionately. Peace.
Later, guys.